GT Improvement course. Today we are going to take some notes and work on some problems involving ratio and proportions. Okay, for this you're going to need your flippy book and go ahead and open to your ratio proportion tab. We are going to take some notes before we jump into the word problems. So ratios and proportions, pretty common kind of problem. I would definitely get used to being comfortable with these types of problems. So first, let's talk about what a ratio is. A ratio is simply a comparison of two groups. So when I say a comparison of two groups, that could be men and women. That could be apples and oranges, cookies and sugar. So for example, in a room there are 8 men and 4 women. So the ratio of men to women would be 8 to 4, okay? So comparison of two groups, men, women, apples, oranges, etc. Okay. With ratio, the order matters. So if I were to tell you I'm having a party and there are 8 chairs for every 2 tables, and I were to ask you what is the ratio of chairs to tables, our groups are chairs and tables, right? Those are the two groups we're comparing. So I would put the number of chairs first and then the number of tables second. So the ratio of chairs to tables would be 8 to 2. Okay? Now 8 to 2. Ratio can be written 3 different ways. It could be written 8 to 2 with the actual word 2. It could be written 8 to 2 with a colon, or it could be written as a fraction, 8 to 2. Now ratios, just like fractions, can be reduced. So for example, if you were to reduce this fraction, that would be reduced to 4 to 1, right? You would divide the top and bottom by the same number, which in this case would be 2, and you can reduce ratios. So this could also be written as 4 to 1, and this could be written as 4 to 1. All right, so they can be written 3 different ways. Now, when we talk about proportion is simply 2 ratios that are equal, that are equivalent. So for example, here I have 2 ratios, 8 to 2 and 4 to 1. These are considered a proportion because they are equal. They are equivalent to each other. They mean the same thing, all right? So with proportion, we only use the fraction form of the ratios. So let's do some examples of proportions and how you can tell if 2 ratios or fractions are in proportion. Okay, I can tell that this proportion is equivalent. This is in proportion because whatever I do to this number up here to make this number across from it, so whatever 2, to get from 2 to 6, we would multiply by 3, right? In order for this to be a proportion, I have to be doing the same thing to the top numbers and the bottom numbers, okay? 2 times 3 is 6, 3 times 3 is 9. This is in proportion, okay? Let's say we had 1 over 2 equals 4 to 8. Is this in proportion? Well, yes, because in order to turn 1 into 4, I multiplied by 4. And in order to turn 2 into 8, you would also have to multiply by 4. So these are also in proportion. Let's do another one. Let's do 4 over 10 equals 20 over 60. Is this in proportion? The answer is no, because in order to change 4 into 20, you would have to multiply by 5, right? In order to change 10 into 60, you would have to multiply by 6. So this is not a proportion, okay? They have to be being multiplied or divided by the same number to make the numbers on the other side, okay? That's how we can tell it's equivalent. Just like when you were reducing a fraction. Now this way of telling that two ratios are equal, this is called the scale factor. Okay? Scale factor in this case would be times 3. Scale factor in this case would be times 4. Okay? The other way that we can tell if ratios are in proportion is through the products of the numbers diagonal from each other. So let's take these two examples again. Notice I gave you all this room to write these notes. Oops, 20 over 60. Okay. So we call it cross multiplying. Maybe some of you remember it. So cross multiplying, we are simply multiplying the numbers diagonal from each other. Doesn't matter which numbers you do first, as long as you're doing the numbers diagonal. So I'm going to start with 2 times 9. 2 times 9 is 18. And 3 times 6 is 18. So the products are the same. That means that this is a proportion. For this one here, 1 times 8 is 8. 2 times 4 is 8. That's in proportion. If you do this one, 4 times 60 is 240. 10 times 20 is 200. So these products are not equal to each other, so therefore not a proportion. Okay? So you can solve proportions in two ways, either with scale factor or cross multiplying. So let's talk about how do you know if you're going to be using a proportion for a problem. The key to knowing a proportion word problem. Proportion word problems always, this is what they do. They give you two groups of something, and then what they do, always give you two groups of something, and then what they do is they change one of the groups. Change one of the groups, and then your job is to figure out how the other one would change. How the other would change. Okay? I'm going to throw a problem on your screen here. All right, so for this problem it says the ratio of men to women working at a store is 3 women to 4 men. If there are 8 men working at the repair shop, how many women are working there? So what they've done is they've given you 2 groups, and in this case the groups are women and men. They gave you 2 groups. They said 3 women and 4 men. And then what they did is they changed the number of men. They changed it from 4 to 8. And then you have to figure out in that ratio how many women will be working there. So this is a proportion problem, and let me show you how you would set this up. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to draw a fraction line, equals, and another fraction line. Okay, there's 2 ways you can set this up. It doesn't matter which one you choose. I just say pick one and then use it all the time. I would start getting in the habit of labeling. You have to know what your groups are, so to make sure you put the right numbers in the right places, because if you mess up that, your whole problem is going to be wrong. So in this case, let's do the first way. Let's try women and men. So I'm going to do my first group that they gave me. They said 3 women to 4 men. Now, if I have women on top and men on the bottom, I have to do the exact same thing on the other side. So which group did they change? They changed the number of men. In this case, we changed it to 8. And we're trying to figure out how many women are working there. So that's where my X goes. Okay? So that's one way you could set it up. The other way you could set it up would be women, men, women, men. I don't care which way you set it up, as long as you stick with the same system every time. So the first group, we had 3 women to 4 men. And the second group, we don't know how many women there are. And there are 8 men. Okay? Now, we can solve this in 2 ways. We can either use the scale factor situation, or we can cross multiply. So we'll do both just so you can see. Let's try the scale factor. So what I want to do is I want to look at the numbers that are across from each other. In this case, I can't do anything with 3 and x because I don't know what x is, so I couldn't figure out the scale factor. But I know in order to turn 4 into 8, I have to multiply by 2. So in order for this to be in proportion, I would have to do the same thing to the top number. So 3 times 2 is 6, so x equals 6. There would be 6 women. Okay? Let's look at the other way that you could do this. You could cross multiply. So by cross multiplying, 3 times 8 is 24. I'm going to keep my equal sign, and then I'm going to multiply these numbers, which would be 4 times x, which is 4x. Now it's algebra. All you have to do is divide both sides by 4. That cancels. 24 divided by 4 is 6. So you can see with either way, you're going to get the same answer. It doesn't matter. Okay? Let's try another one, and I'm going to put this one on your screen. I know you're probably out of room in your notes section, but you've got everything that you need here. Okay? All right, so check out this next problem. Casey has seen 2 movies in the last 9 months. At this rate, how many will she see in 12 months? This is another classic proportion. They've given you 2 groups of something, and then they've changed one of the groups, and they're asking you how the other one is going to change. So my 2 groups in this problem would be movies and months, right? So I'm just going to set up my fraction bar, and I'm going to label movies, months, movies, months. This is the way I like to label, but you do you, however you like it best. All right, so first group, 2 movies, 9 months. And at this rate, how many will she see in 12 months? So 12 months is going to go here. What I'm trying to figure out is the number of movies I'm going to see, so the X is going to go here. Now, I want you to notice something with this problem. Using the scale factor, sometimes it doesn't always work, okay? So, for example, I don't know what 9 is being multiplied by to make 12. It's not a nice even number, so in this case, what I would resort to is my cross multiplying. So I'm going to go 2 times 12, which is 24, equals 9 times x, which is 9x. Now I solve for x, divide both sides by 9. 24 divided by 9. Well, to get this answer, we know it's not an even number, right? Because 9 doesn't go into 24 easily. So depending on what your answer choices would be, you would either turn it into a decimal or a fraction. In this case, let's just say your answers were in fractions. So I'm going to change this improper fraction into a mixed number. 9 goes into 24 2 times, that's 18. So there's 6 left over, and 9 goes on the bottom. And this fraction could also be reduced. It would become 2 and 2/3. So to keep proportion, I've only seen 2 and 2/3 movies in 12 months. All right, let's do some more word problem practice. Number 1, if $1 equals 1.05 Canadian dollars, how many Canadian dollars would you receive for $20? So in this case, the first thing you want to ask yourself is this a proportion? Well, they gave me 2 groups, dollars in Canada, US dollars, Canada dollars, and they changed one of the groups. They changed the number of US dollars to 20 US dollars, and they're asking how much Canada would you get? How much Canadian dollars would you get? So this is a proportion. They gave you 2 groups of something, change one of the groups, you have to figure out how the other one changes. So go ahead and set up your proportion using your 2 groups and solve either using cross multiplying or scale factor, and then I'll show you the answer when we come back. All right, your setup for this first problem could have been just like this. So we have US dollars, Canada dollars, US dollars, Canada dollars. I had 1 US dollar equals 1.05 Canada dollars. Then I set up my other side, and they're asking how much would I receive for 20 US dollars. So they changed the US dollars from 1 to 20, so my X would go here. I use scale factor in this case. I looked at the numbers across from each other and said, oh, well, 1 times 20 gives me 20, so all I need to do is multiply this number by 20, which got me $21. So that was your answer for number 1. All right, number 4. Julia needs 3 eggs to bake 12 brownies. How many eggs will she need to bake 60 brownies? This is classic proportion, and this is actually what I would probably use this for in real life, is for making brownies. All right, so go ahead and see if you can set up your proportion. All right, so my groups are eggs and brownies. So my first proportion was 3 eggs to 12 brownies, and then I'm trying to figure out how many eggs I need to make 60 brownies. So in this case, I use the scale factor. I know that 12 times 5 will give me 60, so all I had to do here was multiply 3 times 5, which is 15, which is my answer. All right. So I hope you can see now the pattern with proportion. They're going to give you 2 groups of something, they change one of the groups, and then they're going to ask you how the other one changes, okay? I'm going to give you a couple more problems to do on your own, and I'll show you the answers after each one, okay? All right, I hope you did well on those practice problems. Remember, with proportion, the key to knowing if a word problem is a proportion is they give you two groups of something and then they change one of the groups. That is the tell-all sign of a proportion. So thanks for watching, and if you have any questions or comments, please put a note down below, and I'll see you at the next video.